So I think we're going to just quickly go over like, oh, hey, look, algorithm. Nice. Quickly go over, oh, the algorithm likes me. It likes me. Oh, I got rated by, it's Satan. Thank you. Thank you very much. So I actually didn't see this video, but I saw Rax's stream when he was going over this. Actually, I'll subscribe to Rax. I actually really like Rax. I think he's pretty chill. I don't know how on point he will be about Diablo 4, but probably pretty on point. But he claims to have played like everything, like a lot of everything. So he made like a tier list, and I already kind of went over. Does he even have the chart? Yeah. I went over like this chart like yesterday, but he gives like explanations and stuff for each of the classes, and yeah, this doesn't really matter. He kind of explains it throughout, but his rating system is like there's 5 classes, so speed 5 means it's 5th of 5 in speed, which is bad. It might look a little bit confusing because you might think it's like, ooh, the speed stat is the highest. No, that's not good. All right, so I think I know the Necromancer relatively well. I know the Sorc better than almost anyone, possibly better than anyone. But I don't know very much about the other classes. That's where I stand. So let's see what he says, and I can give some input.
Coming in 5th, unfortunately, we have the Necromancer, but actually, I'm quite certain Necromancers are going to be fine throughout the entire game, and I'm quite certain that they are going to clear level 100 Nightmare dungeons, so it's not as bad as it may seem. For leveling, they have one of the best builds in the entire game currently until it's nerfed, and that's Bone Spear. Bone Spear.
So Bone Spear is really good. And a lot of the Necros that use Bone Spear, they just go super ham at Bone Spear. They basically do this right here. They go full on bone, but they don't have that good essence, so they actually have to use this Bone Splinters, which does 9% damage. And then they go ham with Bone Spear, and Bone Spear has like a self-vulnerable, and vulnerable has its own multiplier, right? Which is makes it that's really high damage. It's really high damage skill. Okay, I haven't seen like any of these guys talk about how you can just play hybrid versions of these builds. I haven't seen that at all. Yes, you can go full bone skills, or you can invest some into like summons, and then like each time your cold mages deals damage with and their primary attack, you gain 2 essence. So the build that I'm going to give to Danya uses 6 cold mages that cast a blizzard. It's going to be like hundreds of essence per second. You can literally stack attack speed and cast Bone Spear, and your resource won't even go down. So now, if you do that, your Bone Spears aren't going to do quite as much damage, but you're literally not going to have to ever stop using Bone Spear. And it's a minion build, right?
Spear hits pretty much the entire screen, auto-applies vulnerability, and you can get the Bone Spear power out of the Codex of Power, so they are just going to plow. The bad news for Necromancers is they're very slow. They don't really have any movement skills, and their Skellies got nerfed. Yes, the Skelly.
So in terms of the speed, we have... it doesn't necessarily apply to like Necromancer, but it probably does. So you can get 51% move speed, 25 on boots, and 25 on amulet. That's a lot of move speed. The maximum move speed is 100%. You cannot get higher than 100%. And you can get a little bit of move speed from like temporary effects also. So the amulet is normally one of the strongest slots for like powerful attributes. My advice to playing a Necromancer is just get some movement speed on your damn amulet. Okay, that's it. And I don't think it'll be that bad if you do that, because I think the difference between a passive 25 move speed, or 0 if you don't even have it on your boots, and 50 is pretty sizable. Okay, I think Necromancer you do not skip out on. I think move speed is the most important stat.
Skellies got nerfed, and then they got hotfixed, and they got a little bit better, but they're still not great. So unless we get another update on day 1, which I don't know if that's coming, I can't really recommend them.
I mean that's fair. It's just like I think the move speed thing can really go a long way. I also feel like the skeletons aren't too bad in terms of their tankiness. They're not good, but they're not too bad. People said the skeletons were hopeless, and I was clearing dungeons faster than my Sork, like almost twice as fast, and I'd lose like a couple skeletons on World Tier 2 with just rare gear. In the worst state, they buffed them from that.
Speeds, for some of the reasons
20.
we just talked about, they're probably the worst. Necros are just so slow at everything. It's something that Blizzard's going to have to look at going forward because in terms of mobility, they're just way slower than the other classes. In the end game, they're going to do just fine. The Bone Spirit build. Bone Spirit has one of the best scaling multipliers into the end game.
That's true.
And I think that, along with Bone Spear, is going to be able to go all the way and kill the pinnacle boss.
So Bone Spirit, it has like a cooldown, and it just like flushes all your essence down the toilet, but then it scales based on how much it does that. And it gets a pretty juicy multiplier. Yeah, it's like a really, really, really big hit.
In groups, they're not bad. They bring decrep, and necromancers have synergy working with their friends because then they're going to get a lot of kills and they're going to get a lot of corpses, which is going to help them. The problem is, again, they don't bring anything too incredibly amazing.
I think I'm actually going to pull the trigger on this one. I think Necromancer is the strongest stagger build in the entire game. I think he just hasn't really explored these options. The best skill to use for stagger is Blizzard, and you can have 6 skeleton mages, and you can get them to cast Blizzard. There ain't no chance you're casting that many Blizzards on a Sork, even. And on the beta, I was staggering the boss with 3 mages, no attack speed, with the essence regen in 10 seconds. No attack speed. So, like, the actual build, especially when you get Army of the Dead, you can multiply their attack speed by like 3 or 4 or something ridiculous. You can get 6 mages. And again, leveling them up, temporary attack speed boosts, level up Decrepify. Decrepify has a stun, and mages have a huge lucky hit chance. So I think, oh, and if you're wondering, Necros don't get Aspect of Control, but they get, oh, they get the Glypha Control. Look at that second bonus. You and your minions deal increased damage to slowed, chilled, stunned, frozen. So Necro's going to stagger the boss in like 3 seconds, and then it's going to take double damage. Again, I don't think he's really thought of these builds. There's no shot. That's not crazy good. There's no shot.
And their skellies are unusable, and they're a little bit slow. For casuals, I think necromancers are going to feel very, very good. Bone Spear with literally nothing, and again, a casual player, someone that's just got no time, you don't got time to read a guide, you're probably not even watching this video, and you just want to lazily go around with your skellies and your Bone Spear or whatever. A lot of the builds for Necromancer just work, and I think you're going to feel powerful, even though in the end game, I think some of the classes are going to outperform it in different categories. Overall, I put them in last.
For casual.
When they're launching, Bone Spear and Bone Spirit are their best builds. I think their bone builds are way better than Blood or Summoning or anything like that. That'd be another thing for Blizzard to take a look at. And in Season 1, it would be nice if we had an actual Summoner build. In the beta, the summons were godly. I don't think they're going to be godly on launch, and they need more movement desperately. That would be huge for this class.
So I think he's right about that. I think in terms of like a power farming situation, I think the summons are actually a bit slow. I do agree with him on that. But I think when you start going like high difficulty and it actually takes some time to kill each of the mob packs, at that point it doesn't matter.
Probably going to be a very, very big shocker here. I have Rogue in 4th, and the Rogues are kind of...
I don't know a whole lot about Rogue other than the fact that they only have one form of damage reduction they can stack, and it's damage reduced from targets under the effect of your traps. So I think you have to use Poison Trap and make sure the target is always in a poison trap to take like a little bit less damage. They definitely have the worst defensive options, especially against one-shots of all the classes.
If hit or miss. Rogues are incredibly good at some things, and I think they're going to really struggle at others. Speaking of things that they're really good at is leveling. Rogues, especially with Twisting Blades and getting the Twisting Blade power really early, if you know what you're doing, you are going to just assassinate leveling. You have 2 dashes and the imbuements, whether you go Poison to kill the bosses quickly or Shadow Imbuement for the AoE, and then the Consuming Shadows for the super high energy generation. I think leveling is going to be an absolute joke for you, pretty much probably better than any other class. In the same category, the double dashes that can reset themselves and the evades, and if you choose to do this, you can go ranged. Their speed and mobility is completely unmatched in Diablo 4.
I think their speed is matchable simply because my understanding is that the maximum movement speed that you can get is 100. Like Sork can just get 100 movement speed almost all the time if you really want. Also, I think this whole like leveling and speed thing, this assumes that you're at least a pretty good player. Rogue is not like a button mash type of class situation. I just want to point that out, and that's why he has the casual as a 4. I mention that because people who are pretty bad at video games think they're really good at video games, and then they're gonna like watch this and they're gonna think that this guide sucks. I don't know that much about Rogue, but this is definitely true. Rogue behind a good player is insane in the early game. Behind a good player.
In the end game, which remember is pushing the really high nightmare dungeons, this is where the bad news comes in. Rogues are just going to have to survive. You're going to have the damage, certainly, but you're going to have to stay alive. And it's going to come down to skill. You're going to have to dodge a lot of things.
Just don't get hit.
And for a lot of people, this is going to be a skill check. And some people are just not going to make it. I think Rogues, as they near the end game, the end of the end game, is going to prove very hard. And I think it's going to be harder, potentially, than any other class. In groups, I have them in 5th, but honestly, I wouldn't mind bringing a Rogue. It's just, Rogues...
So, I actually don't know this. Okay, I actually don't know this. But I have heard like some of these guys talk about like the craziest nightmare dungeons. And I think Rax even himself said that Rogue would take about 7 of its own health bars in one hit in Nightmare Dungeon level 100. So again, I cannot attest for the accuracy of this because I've never come close to doing that. All right, I don't know. But I mean, he gave a number, okay? And if that number is anywhere near accurate, your whatever defensive options you think are going to keep you alive, you're probably wrong.
Don't bring anything that other classes can't bring. The one thing that is really good about Rogues is they'll always be in the fight. They're not going to be lagging behind like the Necromancer, but the Necromancer can finally arrive and get you with Decrepify and use the corpses. They do a lot of damage, that's true, but all the classes are going to do a lot of damage in the end game. There's just nothing critical, it seems to me, that the rogue is bringing that's going to make me choose them over somebody else.
So he has this like season 1 request, better ranged options. So apparently the rogue players that I follow, like Udijo and there's like maybe one other, they are going to opt for ranged options for boss killing. So like, I don't think it's so much that range options are bad. I think maybe Twisting Blades is a little bit too good of a clear skill. I think if you take Twisting Blades out of the equation, you're suddenly playing ranged for bossing and traps for clear, and it's totally fine. That's why I said I think Twisting Blades might actually get a nerf. Twisting Blades is completely ridiculous, but you need to be a good player to use it properly. So it doesn't seem as ridiculous at first for new players. I also think it's interesting that they have like a really fast class that can potentially do crazy damage, but doesn't have defense. I think that class existing in Diablo 4 in general is fine. Like crazy mobility to just not get hit, I think is a cool type of defense.
For casuals, they're at 4. Honestly, I could see them being a little bit higher. A vanilla rogue without a guide, without knowing what to do, isn't too bad, but some of the ranged builds aren't very good. And if you don't go Twisting Blades with the power, it's actually surprising how energy starved and how much skill a rogue actually takes, because a lot of their survivability, again, is from dodging. And
so yeah, Twisting Blades is overpowered. I think some, like, okay, again, I want to say it again. I have simulated my 5 best Sork builds, and the worst one only does 30% less damage than the best one. So Sork is remarkably balanced. I think if they do another balance patch, they might look at some of these outlier skills. I think he's totally right about this. I think Twisting Blades does like double the damage minimum of the next best skill. I think there are still a few outliers that Blizzard missed in their server slam patch. So don't be surprised if they nerf them, because it's exactly what they did in the server slam patch. They nerfed every single outlier and missed like 2 of them. And one of them is Twisting Blades. Okay, so don't get too committed to playing a Twisting Blades rogue.
Casuals aren't going to be able to dodge very much. Like, add all that together, I would put the rogues in 4th, but in their early game, without a doubt, is going to be the greatest if that's important to you. Their best builds are Twisting Blades, Traps in the end game, Flurry, and Penetrating Shot is probably the best ranged option. For Season 1, I think the ranged options could be better, and they definitely need more defense. That's what's going to hold them back, I believe, in the end game.
So one of the main defensive options that Rogue has is like some Dark Shrouds, which is like literally not getting hit. And if you don't get hit, you get like a high damage reduction from the next few hits. I don't think they should just buff the overall damage reduction of Rogue. I think the class identity they have established is kind of cool, but possibly they could like buff the amount on the Dark Shrouds. So like if you're really good at not getting hit, you really are tanky temporarily, like something like that. I don't think they should give like passive DR to the rogue more than it has already.
Moving on to number 3, we have the Sorcerer. And the Sorcerer is pretty darn good at everything and maybe not the best at anything, which is not a bad place to be in. Another thing that the Sorcerer can say that other classes can't is a lot of different types of their builds work, which doesn't work for the other classes. So Sorcerer is probably...
This is true. I think there's at least like 5 builds that are very competitive in all aspects.
Probably the best balanced class right now, which is probably why they land right in the middle. For leveling, the Sorcerer is going to dominate. You have a couple of really good options.
I don't know if I agree with leveling 2 in a group or with other players for sure, but solo, Rogue is definitely the best. I don't know if it's like 2. Yeah.
Just Arc Lash as a generator is godly. If you pair that with Chain Lightning, you're going to crush the game. Even though they nerfed Hydra, that's okay. You probably won't level as fire. Instead,
I am probably going to level as fire. The way that you make Hydra good is by playing on a lower difficulty level. They nerfed Hydra, so you just nerf the difficulty level, and then Hydra's pretty good. Yeah, that's what I'm planning on doing.
instead, you could level as Ice Shards. Ice Shards is really good. Some of their other
Ice Shards is really good. Ice Shards is really good.
Their frozen builds are lacking. As you see at the bottom, I'm going to buff Frozen Orb. But they've got some options, and all of them are going to be really good, and Teleport is incredible. They also fight at ranged, so you're going to survive on bosses where other classes that have to get close are just going to die. For speeds, they're pretty good. It's kind of the same story. They're just all around a very good class. They're going to have a pixel pull, and then with the Fireball enchantment, they're going to be able to blow everything up. It's going to work very, very well. Are they going to be faster than something like a Rogue? No. But they will do very, very well here. It's going to be very comfy farming on a speed farming on a sorcerer. In the end game, we have them at 4.
I think they're better in groups than he gives credit for. The Fireball on kill works in a group, and you can get the bouncy Fireball, which is the best lucky hit skill possibly in the game to chain proc other effects. And Sorks get multiple ways to pull monsters in through the unique chest that pulls in with teleport. So you can stack all the monsters literally on the same spot. And then each one that dies is like 3 and 4 fireball bounces in place to trigger like millions of meteors and stuff. Like, I think you can have a Sork be the character that like crowd controls every monster, stacks them up like crazy, and the second you kill like the first white bat or something, every single thing on the screen is dead. So I think Sork is actually better in groups than he gives credit for.
Or there's going to be some builds that emerge for a sorcerer that just end up being really good once they're properly theory crafted. On paper, mathematically, Ball Lightning looks really good.
Okay, so Ball Lightning. Ball Lightning is really bad as a baseline skill. It's so bad. And they actually deleted its lucky hit. Ball Lightning's lucky hit is really bad. We also don't believe that procs of skills can trigger itself. And we looked at this a little bit, and a few others as well. In the server slam, if you use the meteor enchant, it was, you could use skills that would proc meteor pretty frequently, but meteor never procced another meteor. So don't think of like Ball Lightning as like some chain reaction something, because it most likely doesn't work that way. Yeah, most likely Firewall Burning can't trigger another Firewall. But I think possibly the Firewall proc might be able to trigger a Meteor proc. So if you're using 2 skills that proc, you might be able to get synergy between them. But I don't think a skill can trigger itself constantly, because that would be kind of ridiculous. So I don't know what math they got going, but if they're including that, yeah, it might seem really crazy, because the Ball Lightning might be able to trigger itself. You can stack attack speed and have its damage rate go up like crazy. And so if you use the normal spell Ball Lightning, it's the worst garbage skill on Sork, because it costs 50 mana, which is like double some other skills. It has a lucky hit of 5. But when you use it, it's a small radius, and it hits like 3 or 4 mobs like once or twice. It's horrendous. It's a horrendous skill. So, the idea is you get this thing, Ball Lightning orbits around you, but its damage is decreased by 10 to 20%. But it's an offensive one, so you're not just losing 10 to 20% damage, you're losing that like twice over because you're losing an offensive thing. So yeah, I think the idea is you get Ball Lightning and you you basically like constantly spawn it and have it rotate, kind of like a Blade Vortex character. Again, I don't know what kind of math they got on this, but it might be pretty decent. It's got a terrible lucky hit, but this function might do a lot of hits. Crits on Sorc are really strong, but I believe that the enchantment proc, so critical strikes have up to 25% chance to spawn a static ball lightning. I believe spawning is not casting for the purposes of actually having critical strike chance on it. So the ball lightning proc, even though it's pretty good, I don't know this, but I don't think that it gets the critical bonus because it's not cast. The only skill that I believe is actually cast and works with this, I haven't tested it, but I believe the only skill that is cast, because it works with this one. Attacking enemies with a basic skill increases the damage of your next core skill cast. So Fireball actually works with this one, and it does not consume the charge. Unless they patched it. This is something that I tested in the first beta weekend. Okay, so Fireball does work with this, but I don't believe other core skills work with this. Like Chain Lightning forms automatically after spending 100 mana. I don't believe that's you casting it. The charge bolts that proc, we actually know for a fact that it's not casting it. Because if you hit something 3 times, which you do, occasionally, it'll never proc the Nova. I leveled with this build to level 20 in the server slam. It never proc the Nova. So, proc skills are not cast skills. Except for Fireball, but again, the last time I tested it, it was in the very first beta weekend. So that may have changed. Fireball, it says different. When you kill an enemy, they explode in a fireball. This might be casting. The wording on it is actually unique. The other skills don't say this. So yeah, I am not sold on the idea of ball lightning build being particularly good. Unless it's been thoroughly tested, I think it's a pretty weak skill.
Fireball is kind of meh. Ice Shards could be really good. Chain Light.
I think on paper, the best skill for Sorc is Ice Shards. Best skill for Sorc. I think it's Ice Shards. I think I want to go Fire because I think I like the playstyle more. But you heard it here. I believe the #1 Sorc skill for launch is Ice Shards.
Lightning could make an appearance. Things like that. Firewall. Firewall could be really good. So all of these are candidates which could be very, very great builds in the end game. Some of them are going to be theory crafted. There's going to be enchantment slot combinations which are going to get it done. Again, the thing that the Sorcerer has for its advantage when it gets really hard to survive is they fight at range. So once...
So Season 1 request buff Frozen Orb. So Frozen Orb does pretty low damage, but it was a decent lucky hit proc skill. And the lucky hit was like 20 or 25, and in the server slam, it got nerfed to 4. 4% lucky hit. So, yeah, that's pretty bad. And Conjurations. So Conjurations, if you make a full Conjurer, I did simulate it, the single target DPS of a full Conjurer is actually pretty good. It's not like the best, but it's within the realm of pretty good Sorc builds. The cooldown reduction aspect of it is also pretty good. It's maybe a bit weaker than what you had in the first beta, but in the first beta, it was crazy broken. The main thing that Conjurations don't have is any real ability to clear dungeons. They don't really have that. and you can't like equip like like a powerful skill. Like you can't just use ice shards with that build, because you really do need all the cooldowns on your bar to actually chain the ice blades. There's no real way around that. It's going to be a really good bosser, but it's going to be a really bad dungeon clear to play a conjurer. But again, I'm kind of okay with that. There might actually be a place for bossing builds. Right? I don't think conjurations are horrible. I wouldn't start playing them though. It's generally only if you need like bossing power.
If they do that, they should be able to get through everything.
I also want to point out that Chain Lightning was constantly said as a really powerful skill, but only like a couple of days ago, by counting frames on VODs, people realized that some skills have an innate attack speed multiplier. Now, without this, if you don't consider this, I agree that Chain Lightning is a really powerful skill. However, Chain Lightning does not have this attack speed multiplier. So before knowing this, I would have said that Ice Shards is pretty similar to Chain Lightning, but Ice Shards, because it has the multiplier and Chain Lightning doesn't, I would actually say with pretty good confidence that I don't believe Chain Lightning will match Ice Shards. I think Ice Shards will do more damage, it'll have a better clear, and it will have better function as a cold skill. Chain Lightning would only be better if you want to kill stuff that's literally not on your screen. So possibly Chain Lightning will be a decent skill at like the craziest, hardest dungeons. Chain Lightning's pretty good at killing stuff not on your screen. Ice Shard's not so good at that.
For groups, they're pretty good. They bring a ton of crowd control, and they bring the Fireball enchantment, which currently works if your other group members kill, which is explosion to hit for 50% of fireballs damage, which is very, very good at clearing out the trash. So always want a sorcerer there if you can pick one up. For casuals, I think a sorcerer with just about nothing feels good for several reasons. The teleport feels really good. You're always at range, so casuals are gonna win fights on a sorcerer they would lose with other classes, and a lot of their skills actually work. A lot of the generators are okay, although Arglash is the best. If you pick Chain Lightning or you pick Ice Shards, it's gonna work fine.
In my opinion, there's only two really bad skills. It's Incinerate. Incinerate's really bad. The amount of mana you actually need to keep it going is insane. And it's a channeled skill that has a very mild crowd control at best. So that's really bad. All the other skills are usable. All the base skills are usable. All the defensive cooldowns are insane. All the conjurations are pretty bad unless you're playing full conjurations. And then again, I think it has a place in the game. All the mastery skills are pretty decent except Ball Lightning. But in like a very, very, very specific endgame build, I think Ball Lightning can be an okay skill. Just to clarify, Blizzard is a terrible skill for damage in endgame. You cannot scale it with crit. You can't scale it with direct damage. It's a damage over time cold skill. That's really bad. But Blizzard's really good at stagger and freezing. So it has a place. Meteor, I think if you have tons of mobs, it starts to be really crazy. Like I think the Firewall Meteor combo, if you put like 50 mobs on the screen, the DPS is just gonna like skyrocket. Because I do believe, and again, I'm not 100% on this, but I do believe that the Meteor proc can spawn a Firewall, and I think the Firewall proc can spawn a Meteor. So that's pretty spicy.
I think sorcerers, again, because they're more balanced, are going to feel better for a casual that doesn't really know what they're doing. Overall, I would put them in third. Their best builds are Chain Lightning, mostly for leveling. Firewall, Ice Shards, and probably Ball Lightning is looking really good for the end game. Season 1, as we talked about, like to see some of their Frost skills buffed, especially Frozen Orb, and their Conjurations as well after they crucified Hydra. Coming in second, it's Mr. 17 DPS himself, the Druid. And the Druid is kind of in the same spot that they've always been in. They're very, very weak leveling up and probably for speed farming, even though we are seeing some very nice theory crafted builds emerge like Trample Slide and Pulverize. But they're going to excel in the end game, and I think they're going to be able to stay alive, and they're going to pump out a ton of damage. Thanks to whoever's designing it has given them a lot of good legendary powers and synergies between them, which is going to propel them in the end game. For leveling.
So basically the reason Druid is bad is because the Druid thing is to get really powerful legendary powers and Paragon board nodes. He didn't mention that, but Druid has some of the strongest Paragon board nodes. So Druid's going to be good if you find clever ways to combine these. But if you don't find clever ways to combine those, Druid is not good. Okay, it is not good. That's why his casual ranking is really bad.
It's the same story as always. Druids, vanilla Druids, have a very, very rough time. Some of the best powers that you could get, like the Pulverized Shockwave and the Tornado Seeks enemies, they aren't a part of the Codex of Power. So you're just at the mercy of what drops. If one of those powers drops for you, then all of a sudden you're just destroying if you know how to properly respec to it. But just as a vanilla Druid going through, it's a bit rough. You're going to have to farm probably quite a few Codex of Power legendaries or switch to World Tier 1 to get through it comfortably. For speeds, Druids will absolutely have the damage. It really just comes down to speed itself. Trample Slide won't be too bad. You just use Trample to run across the screen and throw landslides. That's not bad. The problem is sometimes you're going to have to go back to loot, and that's not fun. Pulverize will do great with the Shockwave, and that's going to be one of their best speed farming builds. But again, it's the movement in between that is nowhere near as good as like a Sorcerer's Teleport or let's say a Rogue with the double dash.
So I would actually consider putting Druids actually below Necros on speed, and that might seem kind of crazy. The thing is, the Druid movement skill is just really bad for actual movement. The Druid movement skill, Trample, it's actually good for damage. But because it's good for damage and there's literally a build for it, it's just not a real movement skill. It's just a damage skill that happens to move your character. I also think that even though Druid's like pretty good and all that, obviously, the Druid has to actually use abilities themselves to kill the mobs, while if you're playing a Necro, I think especially on like the easier trash mobs, your minion's just gonna kill stuff while you are continually running through. So I think in practice the Druid is actually slower than Necro in terms of like keeping up and speed and stuff like that. I think the Druid is really slow. The Druid is move pack to pack and use abilities to kill them and then move to the next pack. I think Druid is super slow.
In the end game, they're going to do incredible. The Pulverized build is going to absolutely smash. Trample Slide will be good. Tornado will be good. Maybe Shred will be good. We'll have to see. They're definitely going to clear the end game, and they're probably going to do it a lot easier than most of the classes. In groups, they're extremely desired. They have some incredible buffs. They can apply 70% damage reduction or reduced damage from enemies, and they can give you your...
Isn't that like a long cooldown, short duration? I think it is, but that is still really, really powerful, of course.
Their Cyclone armor, which also mitigates against physical damage and things like that. So Druids are going to be one of the ultimate classes to keep you alive, and they're just going to hit really hard. You absolutely want one in your group. For casuals, again, the vanilla Druid experience.
I actually think Druid's a little bit overrated here. I think Endgame 2 or even 1 is what I've seen on a lot of tier lists. So I can't disagree with that. But I think the group utility of a druid is less than the group utility of a sorc significantly. And I think the speed of a druid is at least as bad as necro. So it's like tied for 5th or actually just worse than necro.
If you're not following a build guide and you don't know what to do and you just pick some random skills, it's just not going to work. It's not going to feel good.
The group utility of a sorc. Okay, so one of my goals on a sorc is to have a 6-second cooldown Frost Nova that freezes for 6 seconds, which is obtainable. So that's fun. You also have multiple ways to pull in monsters from the room into a single spot. And you can stack the crap out of Fireball, and the Fireball enchant triggers from every group member. So the combination of damage and crowd control, I would say, is possibly unmatched for a sorc in a group setting. The thing is, you still need like an actual DPS to kind of initiate the Fireball chain. So the sorc's not going to like carry the DPS, but it's gonna, if you have a high DPS, the sorc is going to like amplify that like crazy.
Good. Kind of the same thing in the end game. They come online when you connect all the right builds and legendary powers together. I don't think a casual not watching a guide is going to be able to put it together very well.
Right.
And that's probably going to put them in dead last. But overall, I put them in number 2 mostly because of their ability in the end game and in group play. Once a druid does come online, they are going to destroy everything. It's what all the signs are pointing to. Their best launch builds are Pulverize, Trample Slide, Tornado, maybe Shred will get there in the end game, and the Z Druid, which is a support druid. The Z stands for 0 damage, meaning they just support the group. There will be support builds in the game, and I think the Z Druid is looking like one of the best ones currently. Season 1, we definitely need a better leveling experience. That would bring the Druid's rank even higher, and they'd need more speed, kind of like a Necro problem. And finally, my vote for what I think is going to be the best class in Diablo 4 on the launch is the Barbarian. But this is a little bit deceiving. The Barbarian is essentially getting carried by one build. They nerfed a single build here, which is Whirlwind. It would send Barbs tumbling down the tier list, and they're going to be in really bad shape. For leveling, I think...
Just keep that in mind. The last patch that we got nerfed 49 of the top 50 skills, and the Barb player is saying how one skill is single-handedly deleting the game compared to all of their other builds. Okay, just don't get too hung up on playing Whirlwind Barb, guys. You need to have a backup plan. All right. If they do any like launch nerfs compared to the server slam, this is definitely getting nerfed. Okay. I'm not saying they will do nerfs. They might not do any nerfs. They might just go for it. But if they do nerfs, history has shown that this is top of their list.
I think they're just the worst. There is no great option. I have theory crafted Barbarian and played Barbarian more than any other class. It's just really bad.
The leveling is pain.
There's no real way to solve the problems either. You can get the Hoda power, which makes it tolerable. There's nothing for upheaval. There's really nothing for double swing. And you could just go vanilla.
I've actually heard that double swing leveling is pretty reasonable from other Barb players. Again, I can't attest for this personally. Ooh. Got Rax. Thank you for the gifted subs. Appreciate it. I didn't know you were awake at this time.
Vanilla Rend. But the problem with Rend is it's a frontal cone with almost no coverage, no AoE. You have to essentially be in melee range and skill shot everything, even with that. So it's really not good news for leveling for Barbarians. It doesn't get good until the end game. For speeds, they have Whirlwind. And once Whirlwind comes online, when you have your infinite shouts, Whirlwind destroys the game.
So Whirlwind is just a really good skill. And it was a really good skill before they buffed it. They actually buffed it last patch. It's a really good skill because you can move while you do it, and the Barbarian actually has some pretty decent movement speed baselines. You can have a really fast Barb. But again, if the best movement skill is also doing by far the most damage, again, you just might want to have a backup plan to your Whirlwind Barb plans on launch. Just have a backup plan. Thank you, Rax. Appreciate it.
It's going to be absolutely incredible, and it's got some incredible unique powers which are going to just dominate. I don't know if you guys can hear Callie drinking water in the background. Damn, she's thirsty.
That's his dog.
In the end game, I
Border
think they're
collie.
going to be the best. If you have a fully powered, assuming full power, it's going to be like pulverized druid versus a whirlwind barbarian. But if you can get everything, if you can get the grandfather and you can get the unique gloves, and you have your full shout.
Okay, I want to point something out. So there are some really powerful like weapons and stuff, but weapons specifically are rough. So this is the grandfather. Increase your critical strike damage by 60 to 100%. The other properties on this weapon can roll higher than normal. Yeah, I'd imagine that's pretty good. Here's the thing. In Diablo, there's like 3 tiers of items. There's like the regular crap that we got in whatever weekends we played so far. And then there's, I believe it's called Sacred, which is like way higher stats. And then there's Ancestral, which is way higher stats than even that. The problem with unique weapons specifically is that unless you get the rarest, highest version of it, then it's useless. Because if you get a grandfather, but it's not like the Giga version, then it sucks. So think about it this way. I know different uniques are probably going to have different rarities, but like if you think of Harlequin Crest, which is like, oh, everyone wants it. If you get a Harlequin Crest that's not the craziest rarity, it's still fine. I'll probably use it, right? But for weapons specifically, they're going to be really rare. And unless you get the highest version, you're getting screwed. So, yeah, like grandfather of the highest level item on a barb is like really a chase item.
Scouts online, Whirlwind is just going to crush everything for you. Another thing is you're always dealing damage while you're moving. It does kind of suck that you have to get in there in melee range, but once you move away, your bleeding damage is taking over, and you can dodge most of the things, and barbarians are just very naturally tanky. I think. So,
one thing that I'm not too sold on is like the perma shout uptime. Again, I'm not a barbarian expert, but like the cooldown on these is still like 20-something seconds. And you increase duration by 8%. You can get like +2 to this, so you can get it like level 5, so 40%. So I guess 6 seconds plus 40%. You can get it like 9.5 seconds or something like that. 9.5 seconds. CDR is probably around 50. For Sork, it's about 50 if you get every single thing maxed. There's still a little bit of a gap there. Challenging for sure. You get 100 uptimes. The others will be close. Yeah, there's a thing here. Whenever you cast a shout skill, its cooldown is reduced by 2.7 to 5 seconds per nearby enemy. Here's the thing with nearby. If it's like close, like the close keyword, that means right next to your character. So if you're not like in tanky version and you're not hitting this, I don't know. It seems that maybe like basically the challenging shout, I forget. Yeah. So the challenging shout is going to give you massive damage reduction. And yeah, okay, you might never die when you have it up, but I'm not really sold on you always having it up. Yeah. Also, the whole fortify thing is kind of a joke. But there is one thing that barbs are really good at. Armor. Look at this. It's like everywhere. It's like everywhere. And barb's main stat strength also gives them armor. I don't know how armor scales, but armor in the beta was really good. So yeah, barbs might be really tanky, but it really does depend on how armor scales in endgame. Yeah, it really just kind of depends on that. And that's just not something that I know.
I think just with Whirlwind alone, they'll get through the end game no problem. In groups, they're probably the best. If you spec'd a druid fully for groups, they could potentially outshine the barbarian. But the great thing about the barbarian is the barbarian already takes all the group stuff mostly in their builds anyway. If I'm playing Whirlwind, I already take all the shouts and pump them up and I'll give them to you all the time. So I can do massive damage while giving you a ton of utility, which is why the barbarians are so great.
So basically the shouts put the barb in first place for a group. Yeah. I mean, they are pretty good. The shouts are like half the duration on nearby allies. Right? Yeah. I mean, I don't know the scale of the damage compared to other classes, but apparently, you know, Rax is a barb main, so if he says it does the most damage, there's a pretty good chance that that's actually the case. I'd say the group utility of the thing that does the highest damage makes it a good group character. I'm not super sold on the shouts being that much group utility, but yeah, like in a group, you want whatever does the most damage. You need a slot for that.
For casuals, again, not following anything, the leveling experience is going to be very rough. Most of them will end up probably just going for spin to win Whirlwind, and that will be a great option for them. Once they slap on a couple of those powers, it will start to do work for them. And it's kind of hard to go wrong as you get further in the tree. When they take some of the ultimates, like Call of the Ancients, it will start to carry them, and they will feel very tanky. So they should do okay in Barbarians, with Barbarians after the leveling process. Overall, I'd put Barbarians at number 1. Their best build by far in the endgame, by a huge margin, is Whirlwind. And then Hoda's good for leveling along with Rend. We're trying to see if we can make the Thorns barb work in the endgame. We'll have to theory craft that. And a support barb, I think one day may definitely be a thing.
That's really concerning. Again, I was Sork enjoyer. They nerfed everything top down. Everything got nerfed. So if the highest DPS class in the game is doing it with literally one skill that's also the highest movement speed by an enormous margin, just have a backup plan, guys. Just have a plan B. If you're a Hoda enjoyer, then you're good. Okay, you're probably fine.
For Season 1, we need a better leveling experience, and we need more options than Whirlwind. And may God have mercy on our souls. If Whirlwind is nerfed on day 1, I don't know what we're going to do.
Bro, why do they nerf Thorns? Why don't they just, like, Thorns scale more off of your base life? So you can just play it before you have to suffer. Yeah, they can just make Thorns bad at high level. It's fine, right? I don't think people are really going to enjoy playing Thorns barbs at high level when everything one-shots you. Like, the whole concept of Thorns kind of falls off in the very high end anyway.
Do.
Oh, dude, it's for bots. Oh, I didn't even think of that. Yeah, because gold is valuable. There's going to be gold farm bots in Diablo 4 like crazy. Oh my god, imagine they nerfed Thorns builds because of bots. Oh, that's so stupid. Yeah, dude, you're probably right. When Diablo 3 came out, one of my friends, he made a crazy amount of money. His entire apartment was computers running the maximum amount of bots. And he made his own bot. And what it did is it ran in the Skeleton King area and killed all the jugs. And pick up the gold and make a new game and do it all over again. So yeah, Thorns sounds pretty busted for botting. Yeah.
And here is a quick summary sheet of how all the classes broke down in the end.
I'm not going to tell you how much money he made, also because I don't remember the exact value, but it was way more money than I made. Having the highest view Diablo stream and YouTube channel, he made way more than me. This is just like a chart of the list. Again, 1 is good, 5 is bad. So it has like the overall listings for it. I really think there's some missed builds with Necro. I am taking a guess here, but we know that minions inherit a lot of your attributes. Actually, one of the best aspects for Necro is oh, dude, there's too many. Damaging on elite grants you a barrier absorbing whatever damage for 10 seconds. This effect can only happen once every 30 seconds. When you get a barrier on your Necro, that barrier goes on every single one of your minions. Did you guys know that? Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff like that. There's a lot of effects that go into your minions. And I am guessing a little bit, but I think there's like a number of like different effects that work. So it's like, yeah, you know, you can get like minion damage and stuff like that, but hold on, let me see. So I think crit works on your minions. I think it's 1-to-1. And you're like, Kripp, how do you know that? Because when you get a deadly shrine, which gives you 100 crit, your minions always crit. Yeah. Now, it could be specifically coded for the shrine to only work that way for the minions, just the shrine. But I doubt it. I think your minions literally just get your crit. It's just too much work to do it the other way. I'm willing to bet, again, I haven't tested it, so this is not like an NDA thing. They can go check my account. I didn't make a Necro. Okay, so, you know, good luck. But I'm willing to bet that vulnerable damage is passed on to the minions. So stuff like this, where it's like territorial, deal increased damage to close targets. This is a literal stat in the game, and it doesn't say you deal. It just says increased damage to close targets. I am guessing, but I believe that will work on your minions as well. I also believe damage to elites will work on your minions as well. I think if you go to like the damage bucket thing, so all damage will work on your minions unless it's you, specifically you. Int will probably work on your minions. Attack speed, I think they said somewhere that 30% of it goes to your minions. I think crit goes to your minions 1-to-1, I am guessing. I think this damage with, yeah, you're screwed. That doesn't do anything. But vulnerable damage obviously can be very good, and I think that works. And again, I see all these minion Andes using Blight because of you and your minions deal 15 damage to enemies with Blight. Like, nah, I'm gonna spam infinite Bone Spears because it does really good damage, and because I can have 100% vulnerable uptime and stack vulnerable damage for my minions, right? How is that not better? Right? It's insane to not do this. And I do believe all this crap works with minions. I think damage versus injured, damage versus healthy, damage versus close, damage versus crowd control. Yeah, so I think minions have a lot better scaling than people believe. But again, I am guessing on some of it. So I am a minion believer. There's another thing. There's the... Oh yeah, okay, here we go. So increase the damage and life of your skeleton mages by times 20. So this is a flat multiplier. So you get 3 points in it, and it's like times 60. And like the minions, they start to be like, okay, maybe tanky enough, maybe not. Right, but if you're playing a skeleton mage build, amulets can get plus ranks to 1 passive, 2. So if you get +2 to Skeleton Mage Mastery, that's 40% more life and damage to your Skeleton Mages. That's the single best stat on an amulet. Yeah. Right, so I think there's a lot of these like little things that a lot of the people who are naysayers on minions, they haven't really picked up on. There's some real powerful details. I think Necro is at least more viable with minions than people believe. Endgame minions will be paper. Yeah, but every character is paper. Like, Rax on his stream said that in a level 100 Nightmare Dungeon, a rogue gets hit for 7 times its health bar. The thing is, if you have 6 mages that are spamming Blizzard, the mobs are going to be frozen. And then when they get hit, you can get, I think this goes to 45. So you and your minions cannot lose more than 45% maximum life from a single damage instance. So I think like minions are probably good in the early game. They might be kind of weak in the mid game when you don't have some of these powers. But then I think it's going to go full circle. I think when you get to like giga content, like the really hard content, I think minions are going to start to be quite tanky, even though they're getting 3-shot. Because if a rogue is getting 1-shot, and one of your 9 skeletons are getting 3-shot, well, that's pretty tanky to me, right? So yeah, minions might dip a little bit in the mid game, but I think minion builds are okay. So I don't know. It's an interesting way to categorize these classes, but I think that Necro didn't really get the chance that it should have. Yeah, I think Necro is better than people believe. Because Necro has like powerful bone skills. I think the minions are pretty good, but I also think they're like hybrid builds that use both. Is Rogue better than Necro? Well, Rogue's like really fast. I don't like. They said that like Rogue is pretty bad in like the big Nightmare dungeons. I literally don't know why you would need to do the maximum level Nightmare dungeon. Like, is that the only way you get like an ancient ancestral +4 Shaco or whatever? Then if it is, then yeah, that matters a lot. But if you just get like a little bit more experience, then it doesn't really matter. But I basically feel like if content is ridiculously hard, Necro is actually quite good, even with minions. But if content that's ridiculously hard never really needs to be played, then Rogue is really good. Sork, even though I do agree Sork is pretty average, I feel like Sork has a good chance to kind of do crazy stuff. Sork is like, the more mobs on the screen, the better Sork is. Yeah, I'm going to play Sork anyway. Yeah. I think Druid is slower and probably more annoying for the average player to play, but yeah, end game is probably fine. And yeah, a lot of people seem to say that Barb is really good, but it's really held on Whirlwind, so if they nerf Whirlwind or something, it's kind of rough. Change your whole build based on this YouTube video now. Okay. All right. Let me find another React Andy video. Ice or Fire Sork. So I'm not going to get into my builds, but so the two builds that I think are the most effective, it's going to be Firewall with Meteor. I think casting Firewall and proccing Meteor is the best way to do it. But I think casting Meteor and proccing Firewall is also probably pretty good. Yeah. But there's a lot of like tricky things to make that work. Again, it's one of those things where the details are really important. Go sleepy, Douglas. Go sleepy. The Blizzard skill? Oh, it's just really bad damage. So with core skills, like Ice Charge is really good. You can get about 450% crit multi, and you can get 100 crit chance when cast above 100 mana. Okay. So Ice Shards gets that. Blizzard doesn't get that. Blizzard can't crit. It's a damage over time cold. There's nothing that scales that. There's not a lot of sources of damage over time. You can't scale it with crit, which is a massive scaling mechanic. So yeah. Like if you make a new character and you don't have any scaling mechanic and you have bad gear, Blizzard's one of the best skills, but the more you like invest in your character, the more it falls off. The one thing that Blizzard's still really good at is staggering bosses, because it does freeze pretty well. I think some people are going to use the Ice Shards build and actually still use Blizzard just as a freezing mechanism for autocasts. Yeah. But the actual skill for doing damage is I would say very poor. It's not a useless skill, but for damage it's very poor. Yeah, Ice Shards is really good. So the other build that I would play is Ice Shards. Ice Shards was one of my top choices, and then 2 days ago I learned that Ice Shards, along with a few other skills, has a attack speed multiplier of 25%. So you get 25% free attack speed. So that's enough to, in my opinion, put it as a front runner for crit builds. I think Ice Shards is really good. Really, really good. I think best in slot Ice Shards build, you use the enchant where your Ice Shards can pierce. And believe it or not, I would actually use Inferno. And I would use... After using Teleport, close enemies are pulled to you and stunned. So you basically get the whole room in a single spot. And then you cast Frost Nova. And because your Ice Shards pierce, but when they pierce, their lucky hit doesn't go down, you're going to get like millions of lucky hit procs. Okay, like millions. The amount of lucky hit procs you're getting is going to be obscene. So I think that is like pretty ridiculous. But you're not going to be able to do it with like meteor procs. It's going to have to be other lucky hit stuff, unless you're doing like super easy content. The one thing that it's kind of holding the build together is Firebolt enchant. So you can make your ice shards do burning damage. And the burning damage is really important for non-fire builds because it enables you to get a lot of passives and a lot of stats. If you look at the Paragon tree, there's like a whole bunch of stuff that's like damage to burning, damage reduced from burning. This one specifically, there's a lot of this on Sorc. The damage reduced from chilled is useless. Don't even get that. If you're playing a cold build, don't even get that. It's not even worth it for a cold build. Oh yeah, there's another thing. Just to kind of throw it in there, ice shards doesn't chill. Yes, it does cold damage, but cold damage is kind of just having like a tag. Unless a skill says that it chills, it doesn't chill. Okay. So, Frostbolt chills them for 15. It chills. Ice shards doesn't chill. You can never freeze a target with ice shards. It's not possible. Alright, so you're still relying on Frost Nova, so you still got to do the cooldown reduction crap. Yeah. That's why I said that, like, when you're leveling, Blizzard's still a usable skill with the Ice Shards build, because you can probably do more damage casting a Blizzard and sitting in it until the mobs are frozen than just using the shards to kill stuff. So I think Blizzard is pretty good for leveling, actually. Yeah, because when you're leveling, you're not going to have a short cooldown Frost Nova. Oh yeah, so the whole Firebolt thing. There's like some passives here, like you can get crazy healing. But this is something that most people missed. You deal X 10% increased critical strike damage against burning enemies. If they're immobilized, this bonus is X 25. You get 3 points. This is not crit multiplier. This is crit multiplier multiplier. If you don't use the burning tech with your crit build sucks. Straight up. It's just bad. This is like the only thing that's holding crit Sorcs together, because they can get so much crit multi on gear, and then they get crit multiplier multiplier. Yeah. So yeah, I think Ice Shards is really good, but there's a number of things that need to be in place. And I think Firewall Meteor is quite good. Not casting Meteor, casting Firewall, but I think you can do it with casting Meteor and proc. I think you can do the opposite fine. A lot of people say that Arclash is a playable build. I think it's playable, but I wouldn't play it. The problem with Arclash is it's not really like a 360. Oh, Datmods, thank you. Got a raid from Datmods, thank you very much. We're explaining a few Sorc things that people talk about. So Arclash does have the attack speed multiplier, so it is better than most people thought. You can scale Arclash with attack speed, which is not something you can scale most skills with. But the problem with Arclash is this. You can't actually get plus to basic skills. Right, so like let's say I wanna use Firewall. So here's what I can do. I can use Firewall, get +3 Firewall on Pants, get +2 to Mastery skills on Amulet. Okay, so that's easy level 10 Firewall. Basic skills, nothing. Level 5 max. So it does double damage if it crits. I initially thought that Arc Lash is like really, really crazy because you can get your crit really high. Turns out you really can't get your crit very high. Maximum crit on all of your gear pieces with a two-hander is 26 with the highest level gear. This is data mined. 26 on a Sorc. Other classes it's probably higher. Sorc is kind of this weird thing where you get like really crappy crit chance, but you get a ton of crit damage. So the only really good crit builds use the use this thing. Core or mastery skills cast at or above 100 mana. So if you put this in your amulet, you get 60 crit chance, you get 26, you get like 10 from dexterity, 5 from base, it's 100 crit, you're good. But basically any build that's going crit that is not using core or mastery skills, it's just kind of bad. Yeah. The only thing that might save the Arc Lash build has to do with the damage buckets. We don't know 100% how the damage buckets work anymore because apparently the tooltips in the game are wrong, like Blizzard's own tooltips. So that's kind of a mess. But here's the thing. There are like gem sockets that give you basic skill damage, and you can get basic skill damage as a stat on like several pieces of gear. So if like skill damage of a certain type is its own multiplier, which who knows? I don't know anything anymore. But if it is its own multiplier, I think that will make Arc Lash viable. But without that, it probably is not good enough for endgame, in my opinion. Is Hydra build not a thing anymore? So Hydra is just pretty bad. It's just really low damage. You can go full Conjurer, and I think it's a good bossing build, but it's going to be pretty bad at clearing. How do you get chill with a Firewall Meteor build? Oh, you don't. So one of the goals for my build is going to get a 6-second Frost Nova that lasts 6 seconds in freezing. And it is possible. You can get that. It's because skills in Frost Nova reduce the cooldown. So, yeah. Have you seen Rax Sorc build? Yeah, Rax Sorc build was made before people realized that Chain Lightning doesn't have a hidden attack speed multiplier. So, probably Rax would make an Ice Shards build after knowing that, I imagine. I mean, Chain Lightning is like really noob friendly because you can't miss. But Chain Lightning is the worst damage skill for all like the crit spamming skills. The best one is Charge Bolts, and then it's Ice Shards, and yeah, I guess then it's Chain Lightning. But like, I think Charge Bolts is better than Chain Lightning. There's another thing that I kind of went over before. It's like the actual usability of it. So a big part of the lightning builds is to use the Firebolt enchant, so you can reduce the damage from targets that are burning by like 70%. The thing with Chain Lightning is like, if you Chain Lightning a pack of like 10 monsters, a few of them aren't going to get hit. So they're just going to do triple damage to you. And that's bad. Charge Bolts doesn't really have that problem because if you hit something with 3, which is super easy to do, you get the Nova. And this Nova actually is like the entire screen. It's a huge AoE. So Charge Bolts gets that burn up much better than Chain Lightning. I don't really know how significant that is, but I imagine it's pretty significant. Ice Shards is also pretty bad at it, but you'd play Ice Shards a little bit differently. With Ice Shards, you'd probably like engage with like Flame Shield or like the Stunning Teleport and then you just Nova right away. So Ice Shards is a little bit wonky, but the payout for Ice Shards is like gigadam. Ice Blades. Ice Blades is just like really single target. There's no AoE. So I don't know. I really don't like that. My Sork build will have a video probably in a couple days. Proccing Frost Nova. Right, so you see how it says lucky hit chance per use? 53. See that? That means that for the full 10 seconds, if every single Hydra head hits the same target, if you have a 100% crit chance on Hydra, which is not possible, it's actually not possible, but let's say you have 100 crit on Hydra, that 50 whatever, oh, it's not crit. Oh, I thought it was crit. Okay, 30% lucky hit. So 30 of 50, 15. In 10 seconds, if every Hydra hits the target for the full duration of 10 seconds, there'll be a 15% chance to spawn a Nova. Ugh. Ice Blades is like a little better, but the problem with Ice Blades is that it's melee. A lot of the 6 seconds that it's up, it's just chasing targets. Lightning Spear is actually pretty decent for like hitting stuff, but the lucky hit is much lower, and the cooldown is 20 seconds, so it's just really bad. I think Frost Nova is a ridiculously strong skill, but it's like I don't know how to explain it. So Frost Nova is good when you go in a situation and it's like, I need to freeze these or I'm gonna die. And then you freeze them and then you don't die. But like the proccing Nova is like what? You cast like Ice Blades or something. So you open up with Ice Blades and they don't do anything. And then you hope that they're going to trigger a Nova to stop you from dying. Like, what the fuck is that? Right? Like, yeah, so I don't really see that working out. I don't know. I didn't really think about it, but let me see. What would I use? So obviously, if you're playing the Conjurer build, you use Ice Blades, enchantment effect to get a bunch of Ice Blades. What else do you use? It's not Frost Nova. I'm telling you that's not it. Meteor's a bit weak. Firewall, I'm not even sure can spawn from Hydra. Lucky hit 25. Chain lightning. Ice Shards is pretty good. Yeah, that's actually not too bad. Huh. Yeah, I definitely use Ice Shards. Yeah, I think the Ice Shards enchantment is really good with the Conjurer build. I think it might actually be good enough to actually play the Conjurer build. The Conjurer build is fine for bossing. Single target, it's fine. So you don't have to worry about that. That doesn't matter. It doesn't have problems with that. The Conjurer build has problems doing the rest of the dungeon, but Ice Shards is really good versus the rest of the dungeon. So I wouldn't even use Ice Shards on the bar, but I'd max out Ice Shards and use the enchantment of it. You can get Burning from Hydra. It's not super consistent, but so you get 3 conjurations. You do want to have all 3 of them, unfortunately. That's 3. You need to have Teleport. You need to have Nova. No Flame Shield, no Ice Armor. Oof. I was thinking you need to have Deep Freeze. Deep Freeze is really good for cooldown builds because you get the cooldown reduction. Yeah. No Ice Armor, no Flame Shield. Man, that's so bad. I think possibly you might have to drop Lightning Spear. Yeah, I think I'd actually drop Lightning Spear and use Flame Shield. I think this build you can open Flame Shield, run into the pack, Nova, and start getting your Ice Shards going. Yeah, that's not bad. Alright, fine, let's do a build on stream, so that doesn't matter. So we go Ice Shards. Yeah, the Ricochet is really good. That cannot proc. Well, you have a barrier active, cast Ice Shards, treat enemy or frozen. I don't think that does anything. I think that does literally nothing. So just max it out. Because we're not actually using Ice Shards. Always ricochet off of frozen enemies. Oh, I see. So if it goes from an enemy that is frozen, pierces it, hits one that's not frozen, it'll then ricochet if we have a barrier. Okay, true. That's actually pretty decent in that case. I don't believe they're actually cast. I don't believe Ice Shards are cast. Like the ones that spawn, I don't believe they're cast. The Potent Warding is good. Flame Shield with the heal. Teleport with the DR. I might actually go Glass Cannon for this build, but I don't know. Crits to reset the cooldown. I kind of like that. We're definitely maxing Frost Nova for this, no question about it. Hydra damage is going to be pathetic, but the burns are going to be useful. Lucky Hit is pointless. The CD is good. I'm actually not going to get Lightning Spear. We're going to get Conjuration Mastery. It's actually not good at spending mana, so I would not get that. We get 0 of those. We're not really able to scale crit too easily. Yeah, but maybe we will, actually. Maybe we will. Raw skills, damage to elites. Cold damage to vulnerable. Yeah, I think this is good. Yeah, that's all skills. That's bad. Cold damage to vulnerable, yeah, that's good. Gotta get deep freeze. We're not actually using avalanche, shatters, whatever. Less damage. Wow, these are pretty bad. I'll probably just get shatter then to help clear, because the clear is going to be questionable. Crit with a shock skill. Yeah, probably no warmth on this one. Barrier duration, instant freeze. Lucky hit instant freeze, so that's pretty wonky. Giga crit damage. Honestly, probably that one. Oh, I have low levels in the actual skills. $25.3 damage, but we're going to scale that with attack speed a lot. Where can we take some points out? Man, I gotta tell you, I actually really like this build. If I drop that, I can nearly max it. 32, 23. That's a lot of damage difference. Yeah, I think that's gotta be done. We don't actually use mana. Like we do the Hydra, but that's it. I guess we can go glass cannon. Because it is going to be a pretty tanky build with the cooldowns. What else can I do besides glass cannon? I can drop potent warding a little bit, perhaps. Yeah, so I think I'll cast Hydra with this build occasionally. I can't really get burn in any other meaningful way, and activating the burn stuff is just so big. Yeah, I'll probably do this. No. So basically, I am pretty confident that conjuration builds are actually pretty good at single target. At single target, I think they're fine. Like if you have like 5 ice blades going, that's pretty good. Right? It's no problem. So I think the one thing they really suck at is clear, and I think ice shards is really good with clear if you are freezing. Do you need the 1-point firebolt? Yeah, you need 2 points in here too. Oh crap, I just lost the build. Well, anyway. Yeah, I think the idea is is actually really interesting. Why take Fireball? I'm not using the Fireball enchant. You enchant Ice Shards and Ice Blades. This build's got me thinking, guys. This build's actually pretty spicy. I might have to theorycraft this one a little bit later and see how it goes. Flame Shield's not a barrier. Yeah, it is. It's a cooldown. Cooldown equals barrier. Yeah, this is a really spicy build. Full damage to vulnerable. Frost skills to elites. Damage to chill, damage to frozen. Deep freeze. Just constantly freeze, get ice shards to clear. So get attack speed, use one-hander, get tons of attack speed. You still gotta get some crit. The lucky hit is useless, we don't use lucky hit at all, so that's kind of good. Conjuration skill damage. Vulnerable damage is pretty big. The conjuration gets damage. Increased duration. Yeah. Now this won't apply to the ice blades, but I think it's fine. Actually, for a boss, I'd probably drop yeah, for a boss, I can drop the ice shards. We can drop the ice shards, and we can get probably Frostbolt. So probably get double points in Frostbolt. So Conjure is good. Increased damage to stunned and frozen. I don't know how fast this will stagger a boss. If it staggers a boss really well, then control is pretty good. Core skills crit damage. I'm hesitant to do that. Vulnerable glyph is good. So bad. For every 5 dexterity, you deal increased damage to burning targets. You deal 10% direct damage to burning enemies. It's so funny. This is actually good for this build. That's such a cooked glyph. Barrier on kill, that's stupid. 20% stronger enchantments. Yeah, you kind of need that. Conjure skills have 5% cooldown or mana cost per conjuration skill equipped. Okay. Lucky hit is useless. Conjure. So, conjuration, skill damage, mana and life, attack speed and conjuration. There's 10 attack speed. Wow. 15, 17 and a half attack speed. Controlled impaired duration reduction. What? Non-fizz. Where does attack speed come from? Offhand, 14%. Helm, gloves, offhand. Wait. Oh yeah, I guess that's for 44. Yeah. Hmm. I'm gonna have to number crunch this build. This build looks fantastic. The only reason I wasn't gonna play conjure builds is because I didn't really want to deal with like crappy clear speed. But I think Ice Shard's enchantment is the solution. You think Offhand and Helm are basic, not global? Okay. Yeah, that could be. The Ice Shard enchantment doesn't shoot all 5 like normal cast. It's 1 every second. Right. I think it's 2 every second, and I think it's modified by your attack speed. But that's per frozen enemy. So obviously it's bad if it's single target, but the Conjurer build doesn't really have problems single target. The Conjurer build just really sucks against lots of mobs. So the Ice Shards just covers the weakness. And I would get Shatter also. So yeah, I think it's totally fine. I think it's totally fine. And you just blast big packs, and the conjurations are actually decent against not big packs. Frost Nova enchant is really bad. Don't use that. So if I slot 2 CDR, where's my CDR? 47, so it's 53, 10% of 53, because I have 2 conjure skills, 5.3, so 52.3 is what's left. So 52.3 cooldown reduction. So it's going to be just under 8-second cooldown, and the ice blades last 20% longer. So the cooldown is almost the duration. Like very small amount of a difference there. So you can almost always have 1 ice blades up no matter what. And you get a Hydra up. I am impressed. I am impressed. I'm also calling it stream. But yeah, I will say that the Conjuration build has now moved into my top 3 Sork builds. Yep. Conjuration Ice Shards, just Ice Shards, and Firewall Meteor. That's my top 3. 15 CDR from the Legendary Paragon. Yeah, except Lightning Spear is so bad, I still wouldn't use it. I know that sounds kind of dumb, but like it really is that bad. It's a horrendous skill. And if I use Lightning Spear, I'm using it over Flame Shield. Dude, Flame Shield with an Ice Blades build? Man, I don't think I could do that.